All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the end of the world with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu, and today we are talking about Companion, 2025 film directed by Drew Hancock, which examines what it might be like to have everyone's dream, a robot girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And
the first movie of its type, right?
Yeah, this is utterly new territory. Westworld didn't get into this at all. But I think the movie has more resonance in this moment, just obviously with what we've been seeing in recent years about AI. And, we've talked a lot about the problems with AI, particularly as regards bringing about the end of work and the end of the ability of individual humans to earn money
Right.
in the labor force in particular.
You won't need to. It'll just be sort of automated luxury communism, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's 100% what will happen.
Basic income will flow, Stu.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure all the rich people will be fine with that because then everyone will be on the same plane. And, yeah, people love to give up power, after all. So I thought before we talk about the movie, we kind of delve into some of the developments that have been happening with AI of late and some of the other worries people have had about the way that AI is kind of becoming an addiction for some people, right?
Have you had any of this in your own life?
Becoming addicted to AI?
Yeah, I mean, not just you. I have had multiple conversations with people who have said that they fully use, I think there's something named Claude. I don't know, is that like a ChatGPT person, or
Sure.
is person's the wrong word?
Or is it? That's
right.
That's what we're exploring today.
People who do ask questions of AI in their sort of day-to-day life, whether it's something as simple as like, here's the situation, what's the best way to break this plan, or little things like that. And then sort of like, feels like I've talked to a couple of people who kind of imply allowing ChatGPT or one of these things to serve as some sort of therapist. Have you talked to anyone who's doing anything like that?
Not in my immediate friend circle, though I only have 3 friends, sadly.
Yes, well, Zuckerberg really nailed you there.
Yeah, zing. No, I think part of it is most of my friends are about my own age.
Sure.
And I think you, because of certain factors, have a few younger friends. Yeah. I mean, I have younger friends too, but...
Yeah. I mean, the factor is, just to be clear...
I'm friends with your younger friends as well.
Not that young, first of all.
Well,
and fact,
that are like 30 as opposed to 40.
Stand-up comedy. And,
yeah. I mean, I have a lot of experience with much younger people because of being a teacher, right? So I see AI on that front a lot.
Let's talk about that quickly then. So what's your experience like on that front? I mean, we'll do a full episode about academia and AI, I'm sure, but...
Yeah. It's not great, I would say. I think the smarter students are employing it in a way that is mostly permissible, which is to say they're using it to help them spell check, grammar check, organize their papers. But I see a lot of this thing where it's very clear to me that the student has not read the book at all or hasn't even paid attention in class when we're talking about the book, even though I've seen them sitting in the class as we go over the plot and talk about themes and characters and things like this, because they hand in papers that are typo-free but have fundamental misconceptions of like what a book is even about.
Right.
We'll have long passages about things that do not happen in the book we're discussing. Really? Oh, yeah. And they'll have correct quotes because they know enough to find a quote and feed that into the AI. But they don't ever check to make sure, or like have a friend look at it. It's like, is this what happens in the book? Like, am I right? It feels like it's becoming something of an expedient beyond just a tool. It's like,
that's an interesting dynamic or turn of events, right? Because I feel as though there's an inevitability to that level of trust from a student who has come to trust search engine behavior, right? And so I think that, as opposed to the fact that this is still, it offers the illusion of sophistication.
That's right.
Where AI is right now. I'm not saying it won't become
More sophisticated. Sure.
insane, but I'm saying right now, it's like, given the experience of the people of the age that you're talking about, there's no reason to sort of intrinsically doubt that the AI also knows what happened in the book, right?
That's right. Even though, as we probably discussed before, like that's not actually how the large language model works at all, right? I mean, it's actually just generating word by word, the most anticipated.
But I just don't think that they make a distinction between like getting the basic facts of a plot of a movie from like Wikipedia and then getting that same thing from ChatGPT.
Sure. I'm thinking about it, and it's like we use spell check, right, when we were in college, which is a very primitive kind of artificial intelligence, right? It's matching what you've typed with a dictionary. It's very simple, but so, I don't think as it stands right now, artificial intelligence is very good at actually crafting argumentative essays or creative work, right? I've seen that's creative, that's generated by AI has been the most boring stuff I've ever read.
That's right.
But I'm not totally against it because I think it does have potential if you use it as a tool and not use it as a replacement for thinking. But this is kind of the crux of what we're discussing to start the episode and kind of what the movie's about is like when AI totally replaces thought and or a romantic interest or religion. I think that's where we start to get in trouble because that's where critical thinking gets shut down.
And in a society that has also had the generalized critical thinking sort of bludgeoned. So like the way I sort of see what you're talking about is like the early years of the digital age that we've moved through to get to the AI revolution is kind of like really effective long-term body blows over the course of a boxing match that just sort of like eat away, but it does these two things. At the same time, it like reduces our ability for critical thinking. It reduces our attention span. It reduces some of our creative capabilities. It creates these crutches, and it also builds, like I said, this sort of intrinsic trust that what you're seeing, as long as it's on a computer screen, has a degree of reliability. And all of that then is part of what compounds, I think, the problems with AI. And I think the idea of being like, I can see how it would be good in this way and this way is sort of the same as all these other things, which is like, yes, if you've maintained a base level of critical thinking own, then sure. But if you haven't, which is the case for a lot of us, myself included.
No, that's not true, Mike.
Then you are going to have a difficulty, I think. And then just to get into the top of the episode, like it makes it easier to imagine starting to use this for therapy, friendship, and even romantic relationships.
And religion, right?
And religion.
I've never used it. I've never once used ChatGPT or any of these other things. But it's getting so ubiquitous that when I booted up the Zoom to call you today to record this episode, the first thing that pops up in the bottom of the Zoom window was like, enable AI assistant? And I'm just like, no. When I'm typing our notes in our Google Doc, shared Google Doc, I cannot go to a new line without Google being like, do you want to use Gemini here?
Yeah, I can't search something on Google anymore
without the top result being the AI summary.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into all of like what appear to be pretty brutal environmental and energy impacts of all this, which I think do sort of provide a serious critique to any of the ideas that like, well, there's parts of it that are good, right? Like that is when we just get to like, should this exist or not level.
Right. And it also,
I'm not as interested in people who just always say like, well, it's happening. And it's like, well, yeah, that doesn't mean we can't like talk about whether it should exist or not. I know I'm not an idiot. I know we're not going to turn it
You got
off.
some amazing idealist who's like, nope, I'm gonna make a case, and then everyone's gonna be
Yeah,
like,
then everyone's going to be, let's
you're
switch AI off. Right.
Eureka, right?
Right.
Well, I
But
think
like
it's
I used it only with like I've only ever used it for like job search and resume related
okay,
the stuff that I consider just completely obscene to even have to
like
do,
busy work, yeah.
where it's just like, oh, like one of these jobs that I was going to apply for was like, give an example of a case study of some marketing content garbage. And I'm like, this doesn't deserve my time or attention.
Yeah.
And I'll just be like, here's my resume, explain what I did at my job, you know? And it's like, it's not that I used it in the actual submission, but it did just make me be like, okay, now I can take that and then just like write my own version of it without having to do the first step.
Yep.
I can see when it comes to more creative things why
Well, no,
people.
I think it's useful for outlining. I think it's useful for helping with
Yeah.
structure, for helping you think about structure. Um, but you know, it's if it's starting to encroach on everything, you know,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's any, as you say, like there's no way we're going to switch it off. And I think what's getting to the theme of the podcast in general, your point about the environmental consequences, it's like this is like a double end of the world scenario. Because on
Yeah.
the one hand, it's like the fear of the, being replaced by machines,
Mhm.
the age old anxiety. And then on the other, it's like
The Howard Chestnut.
yeah, in the as that's happening, we're also just bringing about the end of the world through the destruction of the environment, right? So it's like there's these two trains that are like heading inevitably towards each other,
Right.
and
And
then
then all of these refractions of optimism, like, well, AI will actually help us solve our energy crisis.
right, right. I feel like that's a little. We're getting to like abundance pill zone, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about this psychopolitics from Byung Chul Han?
Yeah,
Um,
why don't you just mention what the article is essentially talking about?
yeah, I mean, we both looked at articles that that mention this, and you know, this one's by someone called Anna Katarina de Alencar,
Mhm.
and it's from techpolicy.press, everyone's favorite website. But I found it actually it's a short little thing that kind of puts forth some of the biggest concerns as far as AI dependency grows.
Right.
And one quote from the article is, as philosopher Byung-Chul Han warns in Psychopolitics, the digital age is marked not by external coercion, but by voluntary submission, an internalized control that operates through emotions, self-optimization, and perceived freedom. In this new paradigm, the rise of algorithmic intimacy poses an underexplored threat to the social fabric that democracy depends on.
Mhm.
Over time, users are drawn into affective loops that reward engagement with instant empathy, reducing their incentive to cultivate real world connections where emotions are not so easily managed or mirrored. So basically, like when you interact a lot with an AI, what it creates is a frictionless interaction
That's right.
where there's no disagreement, there's no discord. And then if you're really used to that, you're really kind of acculturated to that. When you're out in the world and someone's like, what the hell are you talking about? I totally disagree. That becomes a much more threatening and emotionally damaging experience that can lead to a person, disengaging at all costs from such
That's right.
interactions, right?
Well, and the other side of it, which is, I mean, a bit of a step away from just the AI, but certainly the algorithmic stuff, it can be seen in the opposite way, which is that what gets replaced is this sort of like whatever we might call a real world connection, such that the algorithm stands in for a lot of this. So like, and you find this in many different ways. And one of the
Mm.
things where it really sort of explained itself to me, and I had actually read some of his work before coming into this article, and he talks a lot about auto exploitation. So essentially, the idea that we are gleefully or at least wittingly uh, exploiting ourselves
Yeah.
for some presumed good or presumed freedom that we have. That it's actually because we are free, we are able to do this, right? And I remember reading this at a time when it was just coming out of or the tail end of like the lockdown modes,
Yeah.
where when you entered that in the world of stand-up comedy, there were these basic foundational principles about what you do with your material. One of the bedrocks was that you don't burn it,
Right.
right? And that you do it and you don't release it. And then when the moment comes to like put your whatever,
You do a special that's on.
you then put that out.
Yeah.
And the breakdown in that order, which is also as a result of, um, it's one of the sides of the downsides of like the end of gatekeeping is that on the one hand it is good and it does create like it maybe ends the old boys club, but what it also did was it outsourced the low level producing to the comedians themselves, right?
Right.
So they were ended up like doing all of these garbage shows at the low end of the totem pole.
But just to get clips for reels.
That's right. And so then what ends up happening is that like you get this mentality only 5 years on from that of everybody being like, well, it's just the way it is, right? So if you're not posting, you're just not doing stand up. It has like fully replaced any type of balance or people who just rejected it. And that all comes as a result of this, again, this like rise of algorithmic intimacy, right? That like the connection to it, the constancy of it makes people do it to themselves, putting out their own material for free on this platform, into this platform, for this algorithm, for this company, under the idea of some like potential glorious future in which they are suddenly selling 200 tickets on a Tuesday in Topeka.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that this happened to music as well. Like, it happened maybe a little earlier with music, where it was like CDs and record sales basically collapsed with the rise of,
Yeah.
first Napster, but eventually like Spotify is what really killed
Mhm.
it, right? And so then it became incumbent upon you to. Now the thing is, like, you want a song that gets featured on a celebrity's TikTok, right? And like, how do you do that? Well, you submit to these playlist coordinators, or you pay a PR
You
person.
hire a PR person.
Yeah, and
It's the same with stand up too, right?
it's very similar, but
Get
it's
a famous stand up to be like this clip, this bit's so good or something like
right.
that.
But in the same way, like where there used to be a manager or a talent scout or someone that was going to find you as the talent and then take care of that for you, all of the PR work and all the cost of it is now outsourced directly to the comic, the musician,
That's right.
the writer, whoever. I mean, this applies in a lot of other fields as well. And that is really bad because it also just erodes any lingering institutional structure that was there, right?
Right. It's also interesting because with those two fields, right? Like once I think at one point people thought of maybe it was totally idealistic, but the notion of the comic or the musician would have some remove from the mainstream cultural discourse,
Sure.
right? That like the idea of observation or artistic expression required some type of distance as opposed to constant, incessant, and relentless involvement with it. Right. And that's where we are now
Yeah.
with a thing like comedy. It's like whether you are doing your podcast every single people who Twitch stream like for the entire day, Stu.
Oh, I know.
And you're like, no, again, no, like I get it. It's not like I don't understand it. It's just like it's the idea of this self-optimization, as Han had talked about in psychopolitics, that is ultimately most often illusory, not much different than the idea that you're going to be one of the people in America who actually just becomes a millionaire. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fine, no
Yeah.
matter how bad it gets, because you'll rise to the top. And then this next phase, right, that I think feels inevitable. And you already hear about it. I mean, there was another article just recently about people who had full-on relationships with AI and breaking up with AI and how hard that is. And
Yeah. And it sounds like someone who's quitting a drug. I mean, it sounds just
Right.
like or quitting gambling or some other addictive
Right.
behavior, right?
Right. And interestingly, like it sort of building on the article. I mean, I don't know exactly when this was written, but I assume it was at least being put together before. But this clip that kind of went viral with Mark Zuckerberg,
Right.
right?
Which
Uh,
we'll put the relevant bit about will AI, replace human contact and friendship.
mhm.
We'll put that in right here.
My default is that the answer to that is probably no. I think I think that there are all these things that are better about kind of physical connections when you can have them, but the reality is that people just don't have the connection and they feel more alone a lot of the time than they would like. So I think that a lot of these things that today there might be a little bit of a stigma around, I would guess that over time we will find the vocabulary as a society to be able to articulate why that is valuable and why the people who are doing these things are like why they are rational for doing it and how it is adding value for their lives. But also I think the field is very early. So I mean it's I think there are a handful of companies and stuff who are doing virtual therapist and there's like virtual girlfriend type stuff, but it's very early.
But essentially, like what we're seeing in a moment like that is this recognition that AI is planning to replace friends.
Yeah.
Like in a sense, like that sounds very paranoid, but like basically you're seeing this groundwork for the justification. So there's this moment in the clip where, basically it's like, well, look, it's really bad. Most people have 3 friends. There's no idea of how many they had before the advent of these technologies, right? There's no
control, right?
there's no control
No
and there's no
baseline.
critical look at anything to do with the impact of any of the things that everyone is reporting is making them sadder, is making them more depressed.
And that Mark Zuckerberg himself is like very directly responsible for.
That's right. And it's almost as if to say, we knew you were all going to get addicted to this, which actually will make it easier for you to get addicted to being friends with it, as though it's a good thing now. Like that this was sort of part of the process. And now people are lonely and there's kind of nothing we can do about it, at least institutionally or
But once the stigma goes away, Michael, it'll be fine. As if the stigma is like racism or something.
Yes, that's right. Stigma has no
It's like this this negative cultural value to be overcome and replaced, as opposed to being a symptom of the exact kind of cultural
like
thing.
a very interesting development of like tech speak, and certainly in the AI world, that like it often adopts sort of some of the necessary progressive language
Oh yeah.
about things like dealing with the stigma of mental health or the stigma of addiction, right? Like, or the way people talk about trans rights, right? Like dealing, and that the idea that we can move forward and over time we will, to use his words, like find the vocabulary to start explaining these things in a way that is effective and helps people. But what he's essentially saying is like, we will all come together to self-exploit in our own refracted, disparate lives to start sort of self-justifying these very tragic consequences, and all of a sudden, like, we will get, don't worry, we're going to get to a place where it's a-okay that we only have 2 people in the world we are friends with, but because we've got these really good buddies who are AI.
Yeah, and then just last but not least, I just want to read this one other thing from the article where religion comes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it says, in Switzerland, a Catholic church recently installed an AI Jesus avatar in a confessional booth, offering automated spiritual counseling in multiple languages, just in case any tourists happen by, right? Meanwhile, prayer apps and AI-powered devotional platforms are on the rise, promising immediate answers to questions that once required silence, introspection, or communion.
What question ever required silence or introspection?
Yeah,
I can't even fathom a time where that happened.
And then the article ends on this note where it says, when we delegate spiritual inquiry to private data-hungry platforms, we expose our most intimate confessions to commercial algorithms and risk replacing shared transcendence, personalized prediction. Collective dimension of the sacred is hollowed out, mirroring what is happening in democratic life, right?
And this is, to me, this is like, and I think we will start to go through a bunch of these more specific cases, like the one you've just brought up in probably in full episodes through the months. But just to say, like, this is to me a sort of pitch perfect example of how I would respond to the very common trope when people who are either like sort of feign a neutrality about AI or like a soft
Yeah.
proponent of AI. A lot of these people where it's like this idea that we will be able to keep it in the good box and oh, it's good at this and these uses you can't deny they are useful, as though just like all these other things that we've been building, that it won't come for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part of the inevitable shift here. And when it comes for something like this, I mean, like you said, like that just this seems like a very, very big problem that people aren't really looking at because they're just like, well, it is good at outlines, and we also know that it will eventually just be happening
and destroy the environment as it happens.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we'll come back to this a lot. I mean, even next week, we're going to look into some of the history of anxieties about artificial intelligence that go back to a surprisingly long time. I mean, but companion, and I mean, we've already talked about, Frankenstein is the kind of tale of a lot of these anxieties, and this is a kind of bizarre Frankenstein story as well. It's about a guy, Josh, played by Jack Quaid, whom I really like. I think he's funny, he's good. I enjoy most of the things he's in. And he has a girlfriend, Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher from Yellow Jackets, who I think is great. I think is the best part of the movie. Although I like Lucas Gage as well. But anyway, the movie opens with her describing their meet cute, which is this idealized, too good to be true scenario where they're in a grocery store and he's like kind of smiling at her and he just spills this whole row of oranges onto the ground. And as we're watching this, there's something very artificial about it. It almost feels like the AI generated art and other images that you come across all too frequently on. In that there's no one in the background, there's no one else there. There's a sort of subtle unreality to the whole thing. And as this scene is playing out, she's saying, there have been two great moments in my life. The moment when I first met Josh, and then the moment when I killed Josh, right? So we kind of open the movie with, Frankenstein's going to get Victor at the end, right? I mean, it's like I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that, in fact, the premise of the film is that Iris is a quote-unquote companion. She is a robot with a very sophisticated AI, and that this has kind of been normalized in the world of this film.
Right. And much like, I think of Blade Runner, like that we've covered this a few times, where they are given memories, and the big one is kind of the meeting story.
The origin story. Yeah.
Yeah. The origin story of the relationship that, we've all been led to believe always sort of propels many a long-term relationship. And they tell the story at dinner, like, this is when we met, and that seems to be a consistent piece to these movies, right? Is the recognition that without a base of memories, these things can't really exist at the level of AI that's like required to give the experience that people want.
Has that been true in your life, by the way? Like the origin story, has that been an important part of your romantic history?
No.
Not me neither. Like it's any long-term relationship I've had that sort of falls away pretty quickly.
I mean, I think that you can pretty much make any meeting story. Like, this is the thing. It's like, if you then go on to have a long-term relationship, you probably will be like, wow, what crazy how we met.
What are the chances, right? Yeah. We were both at that same room at that same moment.
Yeah.
Weird. But we see them, Josh and Iris, they're going to a vacation weekend in the country, hosted by Josh's friend Kat, who's dating this Russian guy, Sergey, who's much older. We come to learn he's a kind of sugar daddy figure. He's very rich, has a wife. Kat is his woman on the side. And Josh sort of assumes he's some kind of Russian mafia guy or some kind of oligarch, which seems a little bit racist.
It was a little on the nose of like, let's make sure you definitely don't care about this person.
Yeah. Right before they enter the party, Iris expresses that she fears that Kat, the friend, hates her. And Josh doesn't exactly allay her fears. He's like, well, she's just tough. She she does hate you, but she hates everyone. It is this kind of thing, and we all have dynamics like this in our
Much
lives.
of the build up to in the movie, which, and I do think there are some moments in the movie that I like, but ultimately, like a lot of it felt so telegraphed out of the gates, and this was a moment like that.
Yeah. I mean, Sergei says, "Oh, who is this beautiful creation?" when he's meeting her, and it's like, "Oh, beautiful creation. Is she not a normal person? Was she created?" It's like, okay.
Right. It's every single line for a while has the exact, like, obvious blatant subtext of like, this is not a human.
Right. And I think if you somehow came into the movie not knowing what it was about, maybe this would work a little bit better, but it's literally impossible because you know what it's about from that opening scene. So we also meet another friend who's there with this guy, Eli. He has a very attractive boyfriend, Patrick, played by Lucas Gage, who is cooking and is suspiciously much better looking than Eli.
And has a very fun story of how they met. Right?
They were at a party. They were in costumes. Eli was wearing a dinosaur.
Just knew it right away.
What's that?
And they just knew it right away that they were meant for
Well, that's the other thing. Like with Iris, it's like once they make this connection, they are slavishly devoted to their partner.
That's right.
And the way they both talk about it, Iris says, "Oh yeah, in that moment, it's like there's a piece of you didn't know was broken, and suddenly it's fixed. And for the rest of your life, you will do whatever it takes to make this person happy." It's like that sounds a little one-sided. I mean, I get being devoted to someone, but
and a lot of it is one-sided, which is kind of interesting, right? Like when Josh and Iris have sex, right? It is very one-sided. It just looks like Iris is not into it at all, which is an interesting thing because you would think if you were like creating this technology, that would sort of not even really be possible, you know?
Yeah, the slavish devotion is a little
convenient,
and also it just feels like it would be, who would want a relationship like that?
Right, but again, I think because they're placing it in the near future, it's almost as though it's people who really haven't had relationships. As we learn, like Josh is not happy about women in general in some pretty, I think, problematic ways, and obviously his friend is lonely. So I think it's for people who are willing to try out a sort of transitory thing that the company Empathics, I think it was called.
Yeah, that's right.
Eventually it would probably get better. I'm sure you're doing like software updates, and it's like there'll be a software update. It's like, she actually likes to fuck you all the time. We figured out how to do that.
Right, and I mean we've talked about this, like with AI as one of the recent ChatGPT updates. Apparently, ChatGPT was being too sycophantic.
Yeah,
like when you'd say something to a ChatGPT, would be like, "Wow, never thought about it like that."
Yeah. I've heard multiple people who like put their writing into ChatGPT just to get like a review of it,
get feedback. Yeah,
and a lot of people end up saying, and I've had people say, friends of mine who write, who are like, it helps me because it like tells me that it's good, and I like to hear, like, it comes up with reasons that it's good. It's not necessarily that it actually is good, but the mere act of the AI being like, great job, man, it like helps,
which is no offense, but that's kind of sad, right?
No, it is, but it sort of speaks to
I get it. It's
the movie and what we were talking about before.
Right, that there's like and what we're talking about to open the episode, that there's like this fundamental insecurity that's in part engendered by all of our dependence on social media and the body blows you were describing. I like that boxing metaphor a lot, right? Where in a way, and you hear about this especially with young women, right? The pressure to look good for your Instagram reel, right? Yeah. For your TikTok, for your, right? That these women feel. And
then the paradox of like, if you end up looking good,
then you're making other people
online start telling you are disgusting or
I mean,
the most insane things ever. And so it just creates this weird feedback loop of
absolutely
affirmation and hatred that, like, it's so confusing. But this like technology that's presented in the movie is interesting because it's obviously not as sophisticated as it looks, which I think is kind of an interesting moment comparison to AI.
To what we're having in real life, yeah.
Right? That it does look more sophisticated than it is. And I also think that one of the things I really like is the decision that, which feels really fitting for our times, kind of speaking to the jokes, the joking top of the episode about how surely we'll all start getting basic income now that AI is coming, is that they all rent the robots, so
Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
own them. They're still controlled by ultimately by the company.
They're paying per month, right?
Yeah, I did like that part.
Yeah. So just to kind of speed up a bit through the plot, it turns out that Josh and Kat have kind of jailbroken Iris's circuits, much as one used to have to jailbreak an iPhone to get apps on. And this is allowed, because essentially the robots follow the laws of robotics as set out by Asimov, right? The three
Yep.
laws, which is that one, a robot may not injure a human or through inaction allow a human to come to harm. Two, a robot must obey the orders given to it by a human, except when such orders would conflict with the first law. And three, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law, right? So basic idea is that like if we have these rules in place for robots, um, that's like kind of the only safe way to do it, because otherwise you get the Terminator, or you get an independent drone that's just
Mhm.
floating around on its own, blasting whatever target it chooses, etc. um, Josh is disabled the circuit and presumably doing this is highly illegal. It's a little I mean, there's a number of problems with the movie, in as much as obviously these things would be monitored 24/7 via Wi-Fi, right? I
That's
mean,
one of the huge ones. There's also like there's this weird like ease of tone and lack of seriousness with the actual act of the murder, which feels kind of strange in the movie. Like there it doesn't quite feel like it's really happening, if that makes sense. And
and I think
oh,
that's kind of down to the director, the way it's shown.
yeah, I think that's true, but I just don't think it really worked. And then the other thing is that we are to believe that this plan has been long in the making, and we find out that there's $12 million on the line, but he has the ability to just tell the robot to go to sleep right after completing this mission, and just doesn't, and walks into the other room, which starts the whole action of the movie because the
Right. I mean, that's the biggest problem. So Sergey, the lecherous Russian guy, comes on to Iris. These no harm circuits have been disabled. She reacts. Another key thing we haven't mentioned is the robots do not know they are robots.
Mhm.
They are under the illusion they are real people. The robot defending itself because it fears if Sergey kills her, she'll never see Josh again. So she kills Sergey. She comes back to the house. She is covered in blood. The other people are having a normal talk. And then all of a sudden, as you said, he shuts her down, ties her up, and then for some reason wakes her back up without re-enabling any of the fail safes,
Right.
right?
Even though we're led to believe it was all a plan, it also is like I actually kind of liked her. It just doesn't
It doesn't,
really.
right. I think that's like kind of what they're trying to do, is show that despite her just being a sex robot, essentially, as is described at several points in the story, he does have a kind of attachment to it. So,
Which I think could have worked if what was happening was something other than a long-term plan to get $12 million after concocting a literal murder that you now had to get away with.
right. And like also, he hasn't done enough research about how these things work. Like,
Clearly. Yeah.
right? Like,
Always surprised by things happening. And it's like, what?
how did you not think that that was.
But you knew how to like jailbreak the thing. You know what I mean? Like it's weird.
There's a little bit of a problem there. I agree. Kat at one point is very dismissive. She says, Iris before the murder is like, "Why don't you like me?" And Kat sort of says, "Well, you suggest to me that I myself am replaceable, right?"
Mm.
So I think one thing that's kind of interesting is the relationship between Kat and Sergey, both two humans. This sort of sugar daddy transactional relationship parallels in a lot of ways the Josh and Iris or the Eli Patrick relationships, which are one human, one robot. That we're meant to like hold these up and compare on some level.
On a very basic level. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is not. it's not like Foucault, like breaking
Yeah.
down the power dynamic of reality or what have you. Um, as you said, the robot escapes, and they want to split. You know, they have to let Eli in on the plan, so now he gets a share of the 12 million. And we learn that Patrick doesn't get a share because he is also a robot.
Dun dun dun.
Very predictable.
Very
And-
predictable. Also weird that Eli at first is like, we should all get. It should be a 4-way split.
Right. Well, I think he's pretending for Patrick
Yeah,
because
but all he got to do is tell Patrick to go to sleep and then be like, okay, 3-way split.
yeah.
Patrick's not real. But I
And-
guess he likes Patrick more than Josh liked Iris.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And, you know, Patrick's also a sex bot, and he's even an older, he's like a little more outdated model. And there's a funny thing where there's little bits of dialogue that are pretty funny.
Yeah.
He accuses Eli accuses Josh of robo-shaming him for not having
Yeah, he's like, you should get a newer model.
Yeah. Are you robo-shaming me, bro? I thought the dialogue was pretty good. Iris escapes. She has now her own controls. So she learns that Josh has kept her at 40%. She goes to 100. There's a hunt for her because they need to disable her again before the techs come, or this whole plan falls to ruin, even though the plan is
And
already.
it occurs to him that she actually knows his passcode because, quote, she knows everything about me. Like, he's just pieced this together.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, just turn her off for good.
Much as Kat knows Sergei's combination, which is,
That's
of
right.
course, Stalin's birthday.
I love that. Yeah, that part is great.
Which I think is December 8th. Not sure off the top. Lenin's birthday for sure is April 22nd. But
Okay.
anyway, in any case, Eli and Patrick are hunting for her. They have a gun.
Mhm.
She overhears them conveniently tell the whole plan. And she's upped her intelligence, so now she's as smart as the smartest Ivy Leaguer, so not very smart. But it's you know, like they hear her rustling, so they go around. There's a struggle. They fall down a hill. In the struggle for this gun, what happens? But of course, Eli is killed. One by one, the other human characters in the story are defeated. And you know, she eventually decides she wants to like escape via Josh's car because everything's self-driving. You can just tell the car where you want to go. Patrick is out of it because he's so destroyed by Eli's death that he just kind of sits moping. She gets away in the car for a bit. Josh is able to remotely disable the car. Then he rebrands. He makes Patrick fixated on him instead of Eli because Eli's dead. And then he kind of ups Patrick's aggression using the same jailbreak chip. And
So then now Patrick is going after Iris.
And Patrick is the Terminator, right? I mean, it's like very obvious. Like he even dresses up as a cop. It's very T-1000 coded. And we see the meet cute with the costumes replay, but now it's Josh instead of Eli. There's a funny scene where a cop finds Iris after the car's been disabled, and she can't lie. So she switches her own language to German just so that she can tell the truth to all of his questions, but he won't understand, which I thought was
that was good.
Was quite sharp. We learned that Sergei was not in fact a mobster, but was a sod farmer or dirt salesman.
Right. Showing that the things that get lost in translation, because at the beginning he's asked.
He's like, my hands are very dirty.
Yeah.
Turns out because he's been going through the sod or whatever.
Yeah.
Kat doesn't like the fact that Eli's dead too, so she's like, I'm just gonna take my money and go. Josh very offhandedly is like, Patrick, stop Kat. So Patrick just kills her with a knife. Eventually they, get her back. Iris has got brought back. And
we'll get into the sort of incel section of the movie.
Right. I mean, the final section, and we're almost done here, is, Josh kind of ties Iris up. He goes on a sort of villain monologue, and she blows him up as well. She says,
Right, but the point is his villain monologue kind of like to me sort of undermines the whole thing because it's like then why were you like doing the first goodbye at the beginning?
Right. If you hate women, why? Maybe he.
Right, because it doesn't sound like he's learned this. He's saying it like he's always thought it. He's like the world's a big game and I don't get a fair shake
Right.
and
Like the world
you're not
owes.
even mine. You're just rented and it's like, well, if you thought all of this,
Then
then like
why did
why
you
did the first part
care?
happen? Yes, it's
Yeah,
like you can't have it both ways. There should have been some way to show that his view of her had changed because, and that didn't really happen for me.
I agree. And we learn his hobbies include bar trivia, video games, and prattling on endlessly about everything the universe owes him. I love
Mhm.
the idea of bar trivia being like your number one habit. What is wrong with me?
Hobbit.
I'm having a stroke. It's my number one. It's my number one habit. Um, then there's the scene that was in the previews. I went to a couple movies where there were previews or trailers
Yeah.
for this shown, and you see her with her hand on the candle and it's burning. You think, "Ooh, what's going on here? Oh god." Uh, Honestly, I think I think I like the movie a little bit more than you, but when I saw that trip,
Fine. It just wasn't.
it's nothing. It's not that. It's not great or anything.
Yeah,
But
I think that it's one of those things that, like you, because we go through a lot of these types of movies that you realize
yeah,
sort of the culture of the near future is so overwhelmingly like ubiquitous in our society. Like, what percentage of movies are like a near future this, right? That you just kind of have to get figure with the tone being the way it is. That not everything is going to be this like deep exploration of the issue, and that's fine. Like there are parts of the movie that are kind of fun, and like you said, some of the dialogue is good, but um, the whole thing feels, and maybe purposefully, I don't know, but pretty like non-consequential the whole time.
yeah. Even though people are being murdered and
Yeah, there's a
right.
sense of unreality that sort of underpins the
Well,
whole.
also, so basically, they have this showdown. The techs come. They reveal, oh, Iris is actually recording everything that happens to her. Josh forces Iris to shoot herself, but that's not where the hard drive is. The hard drive is in her belly. Whoops. Could have probably learned that with a Google search, bro.
Probably should have learned that when you were jailbreaking the thing.
Yeah. The techs are like, oh, we'll take her back. We'll see what's up. And then they're in the car and they're like, this guy fucking jailbroke her. He's fucked.
Yeah.
He's going down. And then they are shot because Patrick, in full Terminator mode, has been sent after them. Iris has this weird fight with Patrick that doesn't really make sense. If he's been reset to factory settings, why does he have memories of his relationship with Eli? Doesn't really make sense. Iris manages to save the one tech, Teddy, from Patrick, and Teddy gives her freedom, makes it so she can no longer be controlled.
It's like, what?
Why would that be an option in the settings? Doesn't really make sense, right? Then there's the final confrontation. One detail I like is Josh's nickname for her is Beep Boop, which is a sort of like R2D2 kind of sort of tacit acknowledgement of her robot status from the get-go. Another gag that's funny is whenever he asks her the weather, she's like, it is 72 and sunny with a 35% chance of precipitation, or whatever. And there's a couple little moments that are enjoyable. Ends up killing Josh. Iris kills Josh, who has a gun to her head or to her stomach, is going to blow up her hard drive with the automatic wine decorker, which I feel like if we had seen that earlier, it would have been a better Chekhov's gun. But
yeah, that's right.
It's shown just a few scenes before this happens. Doesn't feel quite the same. Doesn't have the power. The film ends, as you say, in a very dreamlike way, where she just takes one of Sergei's fancy cars, drives off. Her one hand has been deskinned because Josh burned her with a candle.
She's been given total self-control, then murders someone, and it appears as though will never face any consequences, I guess. Just drives down the street in a convertible.
With a robot hand, clearly indicating her status as non-human.
That's right.
And also, so now it's Blade Runner, right?
Wait, but like, are they going to come? Like, it's
no, it's much worse. Harrison Ford is going to come.
It's shown like she's going on like an eternal holiday, but it's like
Well, she has $12 million too, presumably.
Right, but like, wouldn't they like be chasing her?
Wouldn't there be like a GPS chip in her head?
Self-control. I guess she would. It is self-defense, right? the act of murder was self-defense, but surely you'd still have to like talk to the.
It's a robot. Just turn it off.
Yeah, right.
So ultimately not that satisfying, but I thought.
I mean, I think it's worth watching.
It's fun and
a little unserious, but it's kind of fun.
And like, from what we're seeing, 20 years from now, something like this happening feels probably a little not quite within reach with what we have now as far as robotics goes, but we're gonna see stuff like this,
I think so. I mean, there were articles like decades ago being like, in 5 years, men will all be having sex with sex robots, And I mean, I guess they do.
Right, but I mean, this is a little bit. This is a sex robot that simulates being a complete human in a little bit more convincing manner than you're right.
What is the current status? Like, what's a top of the line sex robot doing these days?
I wouldn't know. I'm the wrong guy to ask. We should look that up
for a future episode. We should just do like the state of sex and AI.
Sex robotics.
Sex robotics, yeah, not AI.
Okay. Well, that's it for Companion. As I said, not a great movie, but fun, worth maybe checking out. And my final takeaway was basically like, technology gets further and further along, but we're still just the ape smashing the other ape with the bone we've realized is a tool, right? Human nature doesn't change as technology changes, yada yada. What an original concept. Certainly 2001 had nothing about this to say at all. Next week, I want to take us back to the 19th century.
Good.
Back to where we got going early on. And I want to look at one of the first stories about this exact topic, about falling in love with a robot. Mm-hmm. And that is Hoffmann's tale, The Sandman, which is one of the great stories of world history and is very funny and very weird, hugely important for Freud. Freud talks about this story a lot.
Great.
And it's inspired several very bad movies in recent years, but what hasn't? But it'll be fun. It'll be fun to do a book, a piece of fiction. We haven't done one in a little while, and I'm looking forward to it. In the meantime, you can follow us on the podcatcher of your choice, and if you like the show, you can rate and review us on said podcatcher. Been a little while since we've gotten any reviews, so if anyone out there is feeling
something nice,
feeling so inclined, please, we'd welcome it. Yeah. Also, if you like the show, please tell some people that the show's worth checking out. It won't be for everyone, but maybe it'll be for a few more folks. Mm-hmm. We can also follow us on Instagram at the End of the World WMS. And until next week, this has been the End of the World with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu, and we'll talk to you real soon.